Hello and welcome to the For Our Empire podcast. I'm your host Abby Mwalche, and in this podcast we address the personal and the business issues that female entrepreneurs face in their day-to-day lives. My guest today is Melinda Jackson. Hi Melinda! So Melinda is a social
Hi,
impact.
Abby.
Oh my God, I always get the timing wrong. I always get it wrong.
Oh, it's fine. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. It happens.
Yeah. Melinda is a social impact expert and coach, and today we were talking about how to create a social impact business that's also profitable. So, tell us a bit more about yourself. Hi.
Sure. Hi, Abby. Hello again.
Hello again.
So my name is Melinda, and as Abby said, I'm a social impact expert and coach. And I have been spending quite a while in the social impact space. I have a lot of background in nonprofit as well as a for-profit social enterprise. And I've also worked in the corporate space. So I've worked in global supply chain operations for a lot of huge companies. So I have the cool privilege of having kind of one foot in the business world and one foot in the like social change making world. And I think, and I know that those two worlds have kind of more in common than we think. So what I do is I help people to realize how those two worlds can come together and how you can create profitable solutions for social and environmental issues.
Oh, I never actually thought the corporate world would be in any way social impactful. I thought the end goal
Yeah,
there is money, and without like zero
oh,
impact.
absolutely. So I would definitely agree with you, Abby, that the goal is money for sure. But I think that a lot of corporations now, and whether they're doing it because it's what the market wants or whether they're doing it out of sincerity, we don't really know, which is part of the problem.
Or the
But a
tax
lot of
deductibles.
corporations, right? But I think the good part is that or I should say, and it's kind of in spite what corporations are doing, the market is very much, consumers are very much demanding more social responsibility from
Yes.
the companies they choose to work with and buy from. So I think because of that, we're seeing a shift in the corporate landscape where now, corporate social responsibility, social impact is actually a part of a lot of what these corporations do. And there's a lot of people kind of working on the inside to create initiatives where more than just shareholders are considered, where stakeholders from employees to the community to the environment are now being considered, within that framework. So it's progress. We definitely have a long way to go, but
Yeah. I will believe it when I start seeing more of it, but yeah, progress.
yes, you and me both. For
Okay. So
sure.
I had asked this before I started recording, but let me ask it again. So how did I phrase the question in the first place? But it's not forgotten. Okay, so
Oh yes.
yeah, like most social impactful business kind of label that non-profits label to it. So when we think of like an impactful business, we just think non-profit. So when you say you want to make this profitable, does that sort of like lessen its impact on our society and helping others? Because now it's starting to look a bit commercial, if that's the word.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, Abby. And I have to say, so in my opinion, I don't think so. I think that, we can definitely have both. And I think in a lot of ways, the commercial aspect of it, or those like market-based kind of solutions, actually help to provide more capital, more access to like consumer networks, which can help to drive that the impact that business is wanting to have. So and also there are nonprofits who are adopting a social enterprise model where even as a nonprofit, they have some sort of initiative that actually generates revenue so that they can be less dependent on grants and
Yes, I
donations,
do.
kind of knowing how, those things they can really wane as far as what's
Yeah.
available. And, you have to appeal to a lot of these larger foundations, and if you're, newer and trying to really make a difference, a lot of the
Yeah.
times that can be really difficult. And
Yeah,
in the
funding is
meantime,
hard.
it is, yeah. And in the meantime, people still need help. So while we're, writing these grants and trying to make these appeals, we still have people that are falling through the cracks. So I think that that enterprise and being able to generate revenue can be a way of getting these ideas, up, going, and sustainable, so that you don't necessarily have to have that dependence on grants or other sorts of funding structures like that.
Okay. Is there a fear that if you make your social impact business more profitable, that that you don't quite care about society, you're just doing it to make a quick buck? Is there that perception?
You know what? I think there is, and I think that in the same way, in the space, in the social impact space, I think there are. That's kind of the reason why there's a lot of kind of people that are hesitant about like the money component of social impact. It's
Yeah.
almost as if to say that when money comes into the picture, now all of a sudden the intention is no longer
Yes.
altruistic, or the
Yes.
intention is no longer to help people. But I don't
Yeah.
think that's necessarily the case. I think that intention, as far as what you're doing, goes a long way. And with social enterprises, I always say, for-profit social enterprises, they're formulated, even though there is a focus on profit, the overall business is formulated around solving a social issue. So instead of it being all about profit, profit is just a part of how the system or the mechanism works. So it's really about having that balance. It's about being able to balance profitability with that actual, measurable social impact, and like the people and environments that initiative is trying to help. So yeah, I think that fear does exist, and I think some of that is, could be about some of our fears around money, some of the ways that we talk about money, or maybe don't talk about money in the social impact space. And I think, yeah, people might think of it as, I'm selling out,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah. It's
do,
not
if I
like you want
create
to make money.
something.
You're trying to be very
Right,
holy
right.
about it.
Right, but it's like, no, you can, we understand that, money is very necessary, so
Yeah.
we have to make it somehow. So if you're going to make it, why not help people, why not make it and be able to actually help people in a significant way,
Yeah. 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 Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, so I don't make any ignorance assumptions. So if you make a for-profit social impact business, do you have to be very upfront and very explicit that this is for-profit?
You know what? So I think that some of that is kind of implicit in the way that you like talk about what you do. Like a lot of the social enterprises, for instance, that I know, it's kind of like obvious that it's for profit, because it's like we might be like selling something, or we have like a, well, most of the time it's like selling something, whether it be like a product or service. But I think it is definitely advisable, maybe not necessarily that we're talking about it being for profit, but that we're understanding where any income is going. And you have to have that sort of transparency in the nonprofit sector as well. So even if it's not revenue that you've generated, if you get a big, donation from someone, it is important to be able to show people transparently where it is that money's going and what that money is going to support. So I think more importantly than identifying whether it's like a for-profit or a nonprofit business, knowing that you can technically make profits
Yeah.
within both types of structures. I think it's about helping people to understand, what that money is going to support, and how it is that support is creating like a measurable and tangible difference.
Okay, okay. It's mentioned transparency, so I have like two questions. The first one is that how do most non-profit or most social impact businesses how do the employees pay their rent? Like, do they get paid salaries? Or like, how's their rent being paid?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, and it really depends on the particular organization. So with a for-profit social enterprise, it's you have more. Well, I don't want to make that generalization, but I feel like there could be more opportunity to have like financial sustainability because you have something that is bringing in revenue as long as that product or service that you are selling is actually bringing in the revenue, and you've done your projections correctly. Like people that work for you should be able to pay their bills, especially as you're coming out of like a more like a startup sort of phase.
Yeah.
Now with the on the nonprofit side, I think it can vary. There are some nonprofit organizations that are set up as like volunteer primarily. So the
Okay.
people that do the work there, there's a wonderful organization that I had a chance to shadow when I was in India. It's called Make a Difference India. And they are set up as a network of volunteers, pretty much except for the people who work in like the C-suite positions, like within their more kind of like comes to the organization as a volunteer, and they're incredibly efficient. They do really well at what they do. They have really tangible goals and tangible outcomes that they achieve, and they are all over India. So I was in Mumbai. That was the kind of one of the branches that I got to visit,
Yeah.
but really well organized organization. But it's all volunteers, so they're the people that volunteer for them have to have like a job or some other means
Yeah.
of paying the bills. But
Yeah.
then there are other,
I was wondering. Like,
yeah,
like,
but there are other nonprofit organizations that, either have a significant amount of outside funding or have, brought in enough revenue. Like, for instance, there's I don't know if Goodwill is international, but I would assume they probably are. But Goodwill is a huge nonprofit that exists. I know at least here in the United States, and they actually generate billions of dollars in revenue every year, but they're still a nonprofit. So that money actually goes back into funding their mission and paying their employees. So even though they're technically a non-for-profit, they do have a means of generating revenue that just goes back into their operations and running their programs and making sure that people who might have barriers to employment are actually able to be employed and to pay their bills.
yeah.
So it can really vary. Like there's a wide range.
Um,
So I guess the bottom line is kind of like, just because something is a nonprofit doesn't mean that money isn't coming in, and then, just because something is a for-profit doesn't necessarily mean that money is coming in, so it can
yeah.
really vary between the two.
Okay. For non-profit businesses, do the founder actually pay themselves, or you're volunteering yourself?
You know what? That is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that. So, and trust me, there are a lot of people who are wondering that. And for a nonprofit corporation, at least the way that it is here in the United States, the rules can kind of vary depending on how the nonprofit business structure is set up, from country to country. But I know here in the United States, the rule is that if you are a nonprofit founder, nonprofits technically aren't owned by anyone
Oh,
because they're organizations that are made to promote the good of the public. So in
okay.
that regard, it's really the public that owns it. So you have a board of directors who are, people from the community or, people who are really invested in the mission, and they're the ones that kind of govern the organization. So the founder can't necessarily say, okay, I'm going to like, for every amount that we raise, I'm going to like pay myself from that, or it's not really I, it's not necessarily a scalable means of income for them, because
Ouch.
essentially they get paid. I know, but if you're a founder, the only way you can really get paid is if you have a position within the organization. So you can be the founder of an organization, and your board could decide to hire like outside staff, and you don't necessarily get paid. You get recognition, of course, for being the founder, but it's really up to the board. It's up to the board how much you get paid. So I think that's part of a reason why some people prefer to go the for-profit route,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
your income is more scalable in that way, whereas nonprofit is very much based on a, whether you have a position in the organization or not, and then B, how much it is that your board says is fair compensation for you. And that can, it can remain the same. It can grow, but it's not as, you don't have as much control of that as you might have in a for-profit business structure.
Okay, and then the board of directors.
Yeah.
That's there's a law that says you need to have a board of directors in there, and they're the one that determines how much you actually get. The law actually states that.
Yes,
Holy
yes. So
crap!
yeah, it's up to the board. So the board, they are the ones that make those decisions, and because you can't, because and board members aren't paid, in most circumstances, but they kind of decide how the organization is going to be governed, and pay is part of their job. So they kind of determine that. So of course, it's always good if you're starting a nonprofit organization to have board members who are invested in your mission, who like believe in what you're able to contribute, and then also so that you're clear on what it is that you're looking for. So if you're a founder, does that mean you're going to automatically be the CEO or the executive director? Is that your expectation? And if so, being able to communicate that with the board and being able to show them why you would excel in that role, because not everyone that founds an organization is necessarily meant to grow it.
Yeah.
So being very clear, I think, in communication with your board of directors on that, and then knowing kind of up front that, again, just because you're the founder doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be like in working in like a staff capacity for the nonprofit or a paid capacity. So I think gauging your expectations too and being very clear on what your goals are, because then maybe if you do want to run it and be paid and have that paid, be able to increase as you grow,
Yeah.
maybe a for-profit like social business would be a better route to go. So yeah, it
Okay.
all kind of depends on what your goals are.
Okay. I know you are in the United States right now, but you mentioned you've been to Mumbai, and you've sort of
Hmm.
seen how the organization there works, the non-profit organization there works with the volunteers and then the C-suites and all that. So,
Hmm.
a social impact for profit and social impact non-profits, in terms of organizational laws and regulations, what are the key differences in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, I think it's going to vary based on country, because essentially it's, however the government recognizes the particular structure that you've created, and then the rules that kind of go along with that. So I can give you the best example I know is here in the US, and I'm sure that the laws are similar in other countries, but might have some details to
Uh-huh.
watch out for. But I know for like here in the US, for example, you can have like if you have a nonprofit versus a for-profit business structure, really the only difference between the two is the actual business structure and where the profits can go. So like if you're a for-profit structure, you can actually have like investors. So if you wanted to, sell a portion of your company to like equity investors, you can do that. You can do that. You have that liberty. And there
Wait, you can
there's a
literally
little bit
sell parts of the
less.
company.
Yeah. So
Oh,
with equity investing, if you have an idea that's a good idea, and you've got a solid market for it, and the idea is likely to generate like big money, big returns, there are investors at the early stages. It's like angel investors or like venture capitalists who might say, okay, yeah, like we'll give you, and I don't want to say give because that's not necessarily what they're doing,
they're
but
not giving you;
we'll
you're taking as well.
right. Right. So it's like, we'll invest,
Mm-hmm.
X amount of dollars, we'll invest, $500,000 in exchange for this percent of your
Yeah,
company, so that as your company grows,
yeah.
they also grow their money as well. So, but it's definitely a two-way exchange. But with a nonprofit structure, you don't have that option, because nonprofits, the money that you make cannot be distributed to shareholders. So then you don't really have the opportunity for equity investments, and you can't distribute it to like directors. So if there's a nonprofit who maybe fundraises $20,000 more than they expected over the year, they can't just take that $20,000 and say, okay, hey, we're gonna, everybody on the board will get 5,000, and the
Yeah, it's a
director will get an
bonus.
extra 5,000. Right? We're gonna have a party and all that. So, so that's not really something that you can do within that structure. So yeah, it's really a lot of it really has to do with what you can and can't do with the money you bring in. And
Okay.
nonprofits have a lot more restrictions for that because they get tax exemptions, from the
Yeah,
federal
you
government. So
know.
then there's more there's more requirements to be able to
Yeah.
earn that. So they want to make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to go and not going to the vacation fund for the director or something like that.
Okay, so let's say I have a social impact business idea. Let's say for females struggling with say an eating disorder or something. So I have and I want to create awareness for it, and I don't know, I guess help them eat better, handle their issues. I guess find them a therapist or something. So let's say
Uh-huh.
I have a social impact idea. So how do I turn this into a profitable business? Like, what are
So
the
that
steps? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So I always tell people first is um to get a good idea of what the problem is, and that can involve a lot of different steps. So I think firstly it's also about involve like the people that you want to help, about involving them in the process, because they're essentially your target market, so they're going
Yeah.
to determine in a lot of ways how you construct your business. So for me, the first big step is always to like identify your target market and then actually talk to them. There are some business models, one in particular, like the lean startup model, where it's kind of what they call like an iterative process. So essentially, what it means is that you build something, you get feedback, you make corrections,
Oh
and then you
yeah,
kind of
the
relaunch
minimum
it.
viable
And then you
product.
kind of keep doing that. And
Yeah.
I love that model. But for me, I always add in the extra first step of talking to your target audience first before you even go to build. Like, let's kind of figure out where people are, what people think. It's like, okay, if I built an app, for instance, that tracked your eating and gave you gentle reminders about needing to eat, and gave you affirmations about your body image and stuff like that, and gave you, maybe incorporated some sort of like human behavioral science, and maybe for every for all the times that your eating was on track, you got points, and those points could be turned into prizes.
Yeah.
It's like, would that be something that interests you? Or how, would you feel, would that make you not feel as good if you had somebody that was tracking your eating? So being able to kind of really dig in with the people that would be the end users or the beneficiaries of what you're trying to do, and then kind of based on their feedback, then you can kind of start to formulate the idea. So I always say, when you're looking at that social business, it's the problem solving first, and then you can kind of add the profitability on top of it. And it's not necessarily something that has to be done in two steps, where it's like, okay, let's figure out the how we're going to solve the problem and then add the profit. Sometimes it happens at the same time. Sometimes you're like, okay, I know that I can make an app profitable, but how, in talking to my target audience, we kind of figure out, okay, what would need to be included in that app. How could we roll it out? How could we launch it? How could we make sure it gets to the people that need it? Do the people that I'm targeting have access to like mobile technology like that? All those sorts of questions.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So after I've talked to them and I've built this minimum viable product and then get more feedback and then I make it better, then what's my
Mm-hmm.
next step?
So I would say after that, it's just to build your social capital. So essentially, you kind of got your initial feedback from like a group of you, like a beta group of
Yes.
users, and then getting those people to use it, to talk about it, to identify more people that might be able to use this kind of like the second launch of the product, and then figuring out your messaging, so your marketing, and how you want to talk about what this is, and how you want to be able to get it in front of the people that can really use it. So a lot of the times that can be where like crowdfunding can come in.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
if
yeah.
you've got this great idea, crowdfunding is a great tool because it helps you to build that social capital. So you build a network of people that are invested in your idea, and you're able to get funding so that you can say, okay, yeah, we're going to roll out an even better version that's got these new features or something like that. And as you do that, then you're able to kind of build the amount of people that are invested in you and invested in your idea. And when you have that, that's what really can propel your business idea forward and to actually be able to scale your income and scale your success. A lot of the investors that are in that venture capital space that we talked about, where they're investing in you at a very early stage,
Yes.
a lot of them now are wanting to have people actually do crowdfunding before they even come to
Yes.
them for
Yes.
investments, because they want to see, what do people say about it?
Yeah. And what
What
have
does
you
the
used your
market
first
have
money
to say?
for?
We don't want to invest in something.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly. So
I'm
when
not
you
giving
when
you
you
all this
have that
money.
social capital and you're able to say, we have. Right, right. Yeah, they want to know, do you have social capital? Do you have people who are invested? Do you have users who are really excited and love the product?
Yes.
And then that's when you can start to get into conversations about how do we scale this even bigger. So yeah, I would say after you and you kind of make your corrections and all that, I would say now it's time to build the social capital and build in some opportunities to get some additional funding too. So it's
Okay.
not, it's definitely not a one step process, and it's not necessarily a quick and easy thing. But if you do it the right way, you can get a lot of long term gains, a lot of long term success, by putting those steps together.
Okay. So how do you register this company? Because now, we just say it's privately owned. Like, how would you register this company? Yes, I mean, it's profitable, yes, but it's also social impact.
Yeah, it's called, like, so from what I kind of know in my sector, these companies, and you're right, it's like a mix between a, privately owned company and a sort of like charitable, what we usually think of like in the nonprofit space.
Yes,
So
yes, or a
the
foundation, or
kind of
like,
word that's being used, exactly. So the word that's being used to describe them most is like social enterprise. Now, social enterprise is a little general because, like I said before, you can have nonprofits that have a
yeah,
social enterprise model,
yes,
but yeah, but like, I'm a social entrepreneur, or I have a social enterprise is usually the kind of the lingo, the jargon that people use when they're identifying these types of
yeah,
businesses.
so that's just there it says. And how does taxing for social enterprise work?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a for-profit social enterprise, you're definitely, you're making profit. We assume. So yeah, so you would be subject to business taxes. Now, of course, as a business, you have the opportunity to potentially. I know, like, here in the United States, if you're a business and you're making donations to like nonprofit organizations or qualifying organizations,
Yeah,
then that could be a write-off on your taxes.
yes,
So
yes,
there are a lot of businesses who do that, who donate to areas that complement kind of what their consumers care about or what they care about as a business. So there are opportunities to do that. But yeah, if you're a social enterprise, it's definitely expected that you're making profit. So then, of course, you do get taxed accordingly. Versus with like the nonprofit space, you can. There are some different tax rules that work there.
yeah, like there are no deductions.
Yeah, not really. No. And I'm trying to think if even those look like B Corp. I'm trying to think because there are some advantage. There's like a structure that you can get, and it's not even all of the states in the United States recognize it, but it's like called a certified B corporation. Which means that you basically adhere to all of these standards of what a like social business is supposed to be. So they have standards for your social impact, your environmental impact, how you pay your employees, how you engage in the community. And if you meet all those standards and you're like a certified B corporation, and I'm not sure if there are any tax advantages to that or not. I feel like you get the satisfaction of
You don't
knowing
even
that
get the
you're.
benefit of being like a social impact company. Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what the if there and there might be some tax benefits that maybe I've like overlooked or something like that, but
I hope
not
there is.
100% certain.
That would be like a
Yeah,
very nice ego boost. Like, can you imagine just saying that? You're like, haha, write this off.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, so there's
So,
a lot of room to play, a lot of different things that can be created, and a lot of super creative people who are kind of entering the space and doing that. So I love to see it.
are there any governing bodies for social enterprise businesses?
Um, I'm sure that there are. I don't know. I feel like there are some that are like regional. Um, but I don't know. And there's probably an international governing body. And it's interesting because so much of the work is done, um, in different areas. There's a lot of social enterprise work that's very academic. So in a lot of academic circles, people are starting, social enterprise research departments at universities or like social enterprise programming through universities. And it is a relatively it's not necessarily new in terms of the concept of a social enterprise, but it's a relatively new movement in terms of gaining steam and getting more and more people interested in
Yeah.
like this model of doing business. So I'm quite sure there is like an international body. I don't know how much influence they have,
Yeah.
in various
Probably not that
various
much.
circles. Probably not much, and I'm sure they have like some kind of loose standards that they're setting, but I think a lot of this is still in a lot of ways in a kind of experimental phase. So I think in a lot of ways we're still kind of understanding what the possibilities are in the space, which is
Okay.
cool because it means you can kind of come in and really chart your own path. But I
Yeah.
think in terms of like some like
You do as
the
you want.
internet, yeah, exactly. But yeah, in terms of like the kind of international like oversight and standards, it's kind of like it's a little loose. So
uh, uh, um, I actually wanted to ask next if there were any like certifications or ISO standards or anything you would need to have to be recognized properly as I don't know if it's like a proper social enterprise. Is this anything of that sort?
yeah, and so interestingly enough, a lot of people use the term social enterprise, and I don't know. There are also a lot of varying schools of thought for like what a social enterprise actually constitutes.
Yeah.
There are some people who have like kind of like a mission driven business, but they don't necessarily the business itself isn't necessarily solving a social issue, but they might be bringing awareness to a social issue and then
Okay.
donating profits to
Oh.
grassroots organizations. And then they're kind of like, yeah, it's a social enterprise. Whereas some people would say, okay, yeah. And then there are others who might say, well, no, because your core business model isn't
Solving
centered
anything.
around solving the problem, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're bringing awareness
Which
and
is
you're donating
great, but
profits, but that might not necessarily be like a social enterprise.
yeah.
So yeah, I think because it's again, it's still very experimental. There are a lot of shades of gray kind of in the sector. So I'm not necessarily sure about any like specific regulations, and I think there are bodies that do like the certified B corporation that I was talking about in the United States. There are bodies that create different kind of regulations
Okay.
for like getting their certification or their standard, but I don't know that all of those bodies are necessarily standardized across the board, so it really can vary.
Wow. I literally could just wake up tomorrow and go, ha, I am starting social impact business today. Like there is no
Yeah,
actual like any sort of regulations or certificates I need to get or anything of that sort.
yeah, it's kind of like if you're an entrepreneur and you've got an idea that's going to make the world better, like you can start that business and yeah, and be able to kind of join a network of people who are like-minded, who
Yeah.
have the same drive to want to impact the world. Yeah, but it's very, there's a lot of freedom, I think, still within the sector. And I think as we grow and as more and more businesses begin to operate in this way, there'll probably start to be more standards. But I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
as of right now, it's kind of like, yeah, we're
It's pretty
we're
new,
here, we're
huh?
making a difference, and yeah, we're still kind of figuring out what this thing can look like at a global scale.
Yeah. Um, Are there any misconceptions about social enterprise businesses or profitable social impact businesses? Any you've seen or heard of so far, apart from the whole how do you pay your salaries and all that,
Right.
and how do you pay your rent and all that? Are there any?
Yeah. So I think misconceptions I've heard are that like any like businesses that focus on social impact, social or environmental impact, like aren't very profitable. Like, like you can make a little bit of money, but not a lot. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like there are like multi-million dollar organizations that are social impact focused. So it's definitely not, it's not something that it's a that you won't be able to make money at or be successful at as long as you're doing all the things that you need to do. So I
Yeah.
think that's one big misconception. I think the other is that there's like and I found this too, that sometimes there's a little bit of a barrier to entry to the space. Like people
Oh,
think that like you need to have a business degree with a concentration in like
yeah.
social enterprise to be able to create a social enterprise, and
You
that's
don't?
that's not true. It's just
Oh,
nope. It's just like
I thought that as well.
any other. Yeah. Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad we talked about this. Okay,
Yeah,
but
but
no,
like,
it's just
think about it. So how would you start like an environmental focus, social impact, and then like how would I trust you to know about the environment, do?
yeah. No, that's a good question, and I think it's I think, and that could be part of why what I've seen is that you don't have, you got a lot of people who I think in terms of the ideology would be very interested in operating a business that runs this way, but might not necessarily think that there's a space for them like within
Oh,
the movement, because they might think like, oh, well, I need to have like these sort of credentials, but it's like, no, it's like operating any other business. Like they're, people who started up a restaurant, maybe a small family restaurant, might not have been a chef, might not have
no.
gone to culinary school, but they knew how to make really good food, and they knew that there were people who would want to eat their food, and
Yes.
were able to create a thriving business that way. So I think that's the cool thing about entrepreneurship, is that you don't necessarily, you can have a ton of credentials and that's great, but you don't necessarily have to. There
Yeah.
are ways that you can get help, and that's kind of one of the things that I do in my business. I've created digital courses so that you can be, whoever from wherever, and take one of my courses and actually be able to design and launch your social impact business, because I feel like people might not feel like this is something, a reality that's accessible to them, but in all actuality, it's like we really need as many people as possible operating in this capacity, because we've got a lot of issues in the world and a lot of change that needs to be made.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't, fortunately, it can't be left to kind of a select group of very elite people. It's like we have to be able to find ways to include people who are
Yes.
rich, people who are poor, people who are
Yeah. We should be
educated,
more
people who are
inclusive.
uneducated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what my work tries to do, is really kind of what I always say, like level the playing field, like make it even, so that way, if you're university educated, you can come into my course and launch successfully. Or if may have just, if you may have never gone to university and only maybe graduated from high school, but you have a passion and you want to create business, like that, you can come into my course
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
launch
Yeah.
successfully, because we need both. We need both sorts
Yeah.
of viewpoints and experiences at the
Yeah. Yeah.
table.
Yeah. Yeah. Your passion should not be quantified based on what education you have. Like you cannot
Right.
quantify your passion on that. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
like how you just mentioned your courses and how you try to teach them how to level the playing field. So can you tell us a bit more about your courses and where we can find it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a course. It's actually open right now for enrollment, but it's called Social Impact Summer Camp. And essentially, what it is it's an online course. So anybody anywhere in the world can take it. And it's an online course and a community of people who are like either aspiring social entrepreneurs, or by the end of the course you'll be a social entrepreneur. But it's meant to take you from idea, so just what we talked about together today. It's meant to help you solidify that idea, do all the work that's necessary to create a profitable design for your business, and then be actually able to launch that at the end of the course. So it's not kind of what some people might refer to as like an action plan, where it's like, okay, here's what you're passionate about, here's what you can do with your business, like just go do it and we'll see you later. Like it's an actual step-by-step guide. So as you're in the course, there are milestones that you complete, and we do everything together, so you don't get left behind. So fundraising is a part of it, and that building your network of social capital is a part of it. And we hold your hand through every step to make sure that you're able to launch successfully. And then at the end, we also have what I call my art of crafting the perfect pitch. So even once you're done, once you've launched, once you're all good there, there's some post-launch resources that I included in the course that actually teach you how to talk about your idea, how to pitch your idea, so that you could maybe pitch it to your community. Or if you wanted to go talk to investors, you would have the resources that you need to do that. So it's really meant to be a holistic program. And then you also get access to the course, for life. So I'm going to continue as I grow and as I learn, I continue to add more and more elements to the course. And once you purchase it, it's yours for life. And then you get access to the community. So if you're doing a pivot in your business and maybe you want to see if there's someone who wants to partner with you, you can access the community of people you already have who are interested in this sort of business model. So it really provides a lot of value in that way. And yeah, it's a lot of fun too. Like it's more fun than you would think starting a business. Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it. I think it's like, I always say it's like probably one of the best things that I've created. I like to think I've created some really cool things in my life, but like this one is probably one of the best. So
your baby.
It is. It's my baby.
So where can I find this online? What's the website?
Yeah. So if you go to www.melinda, so like my first name, Melinda, makeschange.com.
Okay.
Yep, so www.melindamakechange.com, and you can find it there.
Oh, okay. So it's people who want to start a social impact business, a profitable social impact business.
Exactly. Yes. And I will even if there's folks out there who want to start a nonprofit, as long as you're looking to create a profitable stream of or a profitable
revenue
profitable stream of revenue, it's something that you could join in as well. You don't necessarily have to have a for-profit business structure to be able to benefit, but you do have to be focused on making creating a stream of revenue, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit.
Yeah. So anything I might have missed out? Any questions that I should have asked but I did not?
No, Abby, I think you did a fantastic job. I can't think of any other questions at this time. I think it was, we really got into it and got a thorough overview.
I tried to make sure that I ask as much because I'm coming from a point of 0-0 on this. So I try to ask questions based on what I'm learning as we go. So, but there are some things that might seem obvious that I might not have asked. So just let me know.
Yeah, no. I think you covered it pretty well. I'm even trying to think now. I'm like, okay, is there anything that I've addressed before in other interviews that we didn't talk about? But no, I don't think so. I think that was good. We can call this a success, I think.
Yay, thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks for agreeing to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me and giving me the time. It's been fun.
It's just fun as well.